Ecam Live, my faithful and trusted servant. You do well. Isn't that interesting? It's Thursday, and you might be saying to yourself, you might be asking, it's Thursday, and Arthur promised us something. Arthur promised us something really awesome and cool for today. Why are we not seeing him introduce the podcast with the one, the only, the very legendary internet sensation, John McCrae of What Do You Mean? Well, some stuff came up, and we had to reschedule our stream. Not too distant in the future, folks, just till tomorrow. So I thought what we'll do today is essentially have a Q&A. People can call in. I've dropped a link there. We can have a conversation, and then we can go to, we'll have that interview with John tomorrow. Really excited for that, by the way. I think it'll be really fun, but that's essentially why we're doing what we're doing. So yeah. Hit that like button. My voice is doing funky stuff, so no apparent reason. Rick, what's going on, man? Shalom. That's huge. What happened? Nothing. Why is it so big? Stream, yeah, so are you giving up on StreamYard? Yeah, unless they're being really sneaky, and what's going on is, the unpaid version is just very lousy, and they're doing that for me to buy a paid version, which I want to test the unpaid version before I'm going to invest that kind of money into buying the paid version, which is not happening considering the way they've been working. So yeah. By the way, good seeing you, Keanu. Hello, Pastor Arthur. Just to say, I'm not a pastor. I was, and I appreciate folks having that respect. I appreciate folks having that kind of a respect, but I'm not a pastor. Like, functionally, I'm not a pastor. So I'm an elder at my church. I just appreciate you guys to just call me Arthur, which is fine. No need for titles and stuff. Even when I was pastoring, I really didn't like it when people called me Pastor Arthur, because I don't know. I'm not into titles very much, but I appreciate that. I have the full quote from Pliny and others as well. If you want, we can continue. If you want to call in, you're more than welcome to, but it's very difficult. I think it's like having a conversation of this sort just becomes extremely difficult when you're writing and I'm talking. And it's difficult for you and for me as well. So if you want to call in and have a conversation about alcohol and then like properly state what your position is, we can do that. I have no issues with that. But not over like you writing and me responding. Faith says, hey, I'm with you on the titles thing. Thanks, Faith. Yeah, it's, again, I mean, I don't mind it. And I know there's a lady in our church who, whatever I do, will never, ever stop calling me that. And sometimes it's a cultural thing. It's dignity and respect and all that stuff. But yeah. Thanks. I hope that you guys were able to watch my stream from yesterday. I actually think that stream came out pretty well. What I've done is I've edited out two parts of that video, and then they're going to be shorter videos. One's 13 minutes and the other one's 20 minutes. And hopefully we'll be able to upload that sometime today or tomorrow. We will see, or maybe one today and one Monday or something like that, but we're working on it. Again, the link to call in is dropped in the comment section. It's pinned, so you will be able to just hit that and then click on the link, and it'll take you through the appropriate steps for you to be able to call in. Okay. Oh man. Are you referring to the video response? I think it was well done. Yeah. I tried not to get distracted and really seriously take her arguments, or take her arguments seriously. And again, I usually, whenever I do response videos, I prefer not to watch them prior. So I don't do any research in regards to preparation work. I watch them, and the reason why I do that, there's a reason. It's not because I'm lazy. The reason why I do that is because I want to portray for people, I want to show people what it's like when you get into a conversation or a topic is brought up and you don't have the time to prepare. And like most good things, you want your preparation work to be done during practice, right? Like your own personal study, like that's when you want a lot of your preparation work to be done. But this video, I actually watched it because I've seen a number of videos from her, very short videos, never a long form like that. And I think I've seen responses on some of them by Inspiring Philosophy. And for this one, I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch it. I want to watch it. And so I watched it. And I can't say I did preparation work per se. I did probably like 2 pages of reading on a certain aspect of it. And then I just really try to stay on topic in giving a proper response to her, whatever issues she had. I mean, she said these are the verses that led her away from Christianity. And my main point for the video was none of those needed to happen. None of those verses, or even collectively, none of those passages all together piled on top of each other should result in somebody abandoning Christianity. It might result in you being challenged in your Christianity. It might result in you even taking on theological positions that might be a bit weird. But it wouldn't be abandoning Christianity, right? So like there's people that might look at some of those passages, let's just say, and say, well, I don't think the Bible is inspired. Or I think it's like semi-inspired or something like that. Or have a certain view of inspiration, or allow for mistakes to be in the Bible. Like those positions, I would say, are incorrect. And I think it would lead to eventual problems for people who have those views of Scripture. And I don't think anybody needs to take those positions. But that would be the next step down. That it would be, hey, I don't think the Bible's fully inspired, or it's only inspired in matters of faith or something like that, and not historical X, Y, and Z. But again, it doesn't logically result in, well, Christianity is false. Or even more than that. I mean, it's not that she didn't take a position that Christianity is false. She took a position that God doesn't exist. Which again, you're taking on more burden of proof for those positions. And so that was the aim of that video, was to show that her conclusions were unfounded, and that even though she's trying to be very logical and whatever systematic in her thinking, she is not. I mean, way too simple of mistakes that she keeps making. I mean, she made some horrendous mistakes, especially when it came to reading. I think the one where, and this is one of them that I'll throw out there as a separate clip, when she's speaking about the Israelites engaging in war and offering peace. And the way she reads that text, I'm just like, dude, like, you should check what you're reading, and your understanding of whatever it is that you're reading is correct. Sounds like her conclusions were rooted in her emotions about the scriptures. Maybe. Okay. If you have incorrect premises, they will lead you to incorrect conclusions. So forgive me for being a bit, I don't know, emotionless here, or like too heady or something like that. But so it's much easier for me to accuse someone of having incorrect premises and then having an incorrect conclusion, rather than assume that they've got certain emotional whatever, because I don't have access to that information. It could be the case. Again, I don't have access to that information. It very clearly is the case, or was the case for me, that she had incorrect theological views, and those incorrect theological views, because they were incorrect, became problems for her, or became problematic for her. And so again, it's much easier for me to say this premise is wrong, that premise is wrong, or it's unfounded, or something like that, and then your conclusions are going to be problematic and have issues. Whatever else happens in people's lives, I always say, and I've said, and I will continue to say, people don't give up their faith in God because of purely logical reasons, and people don't necessarily come to believe in God for purely logical reasons. We are not robots, automatons. You don't just input information and get some kind of a response. There's a lot more going on in our lives. Now, I don't know what was going on in her life, and I don't need to. She doesn't need to get out there and say this is what was going on in her life. I know when I was searching for God and searching for religion and searching whether Christianity is true or false, or whatever religion, for me, I've always said it was an existential crisis. Now, it was a more analytical approach to the subject, but there was a real existential crisis that I was having as a 17, 18-year-old about the purpose of life and the meaning and so on and so forth. But my conclusions didn't necessarily stop there. Like when I became a Christian, I've continued on studying these things. I've grown both in my understanding of Christianity and what the Bible teaches, but also in my understanding of how other worldviews explain this and what atheism is and all of that. I haven't taken any of those really off the table in regards to a point of inquiry. I mean, I might have taken some of them off the table as real possibilities. That's because there's some major things wrong with them. That's why they're not a real possibility. But yeah. She's wrong because you can't prove something doesn't exist. That's just philosophically incorrect. I've mentioned this before, but okay. Stick to your guns, man. I don't know what you mean here. Would you agree that deism is greater than atheism and Christianity is greater than every other world religion? Okay, so assuming I know what you mean by greater, if I think I'm understanding you right in regards to what you mean by greater, let's just say more plausible. Yeah, I think deism is more plausible than atheism. I think atheism is a pretty hard bullet to. Is it bullet to swallow? Is that the phrase? Bite the bullet. Yeah, it's bite. When I say Christianity is more plausible than every other world religion, yeah, I mean clearly I would say that, and that's partly why I'm a Christian. Lex, maybe so. It seems to me that she really doesn't. She has certain values that she thinks are better values, and when she compares it to the Bible, she goes, even if this God of the Bible existed, I don't want to believe in him. There was something that I had intended to speak about yesterday, and I don't think I did. I'm pretty sure I didn't speak about this. And it's actually a really good point, in my opinion, when it comes to comparing worldviews. So she said in the beginning of the video that she was under this impression that God had created human beings with free will and the ability to choose to follow God or not, and X, Y, and Z. And it seemed to me that she held free will up to this really high standard. And then when she read Romans 9 and came to a Calvinistic interpretation of it, that didn't sit with her very well. Okay. The opposite is atheism, by the way. And if you look at atheism, you're looking at the very, very least at soft determinism. I would argue that you're looking at some kind of a probabilistic determinism. And so you went from a worldview that I would say you believed in free will of a certain sort, and instead of adjusting your worldview in regards to free will of a certain sort, say you take on a compatibilistic approach to Calvinism, which plenty of people do, you went to a deterministic worldview, which is atheism. And I know the atheists out there are going to say, well, it's not an X, Y, and Z. I think that you guys can't really defend that. Yeah, it is pill to swallow. It's bullet to bite and pill to swallow. I had mixed up two different analogies there. How do I want to do this? Oh, there it is. Sean, what's up, man?
Hello, Arthur.
How you doing?
Nice to talk to you again.
You too.
Yeah, I'm just going on a website. 101 mistakes in the Bible.
Contradictions. Yeah. Sure.
No, it's a website.
Fire away. I know.
101 of the craziest.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just going to the first one. All right. God spends a day making light before making trillions of stars. He made the stars also, and almost as an afterthought, he makes the trillions of stars.
So let me stop you there.
Genesis 1:14.
Yeah, let me just stop you there. That's assuming a very specific interpretation of those passages. And if you take an interpretation of the way that I view Genesis, that's not an issue at all. But again, there are responses to those things in regards to what let there be light could mean, as opposed to the physical light of stars and the sun and X, Y, and Z. I know people put these things out there and they go, oh, look, this and that. And this is I've visited plenty of those websites, Sean. They don't do justice. Very rarely do they do justice to the views that there are within the Christian worldview, within Christianity, let me put it that way. That would explain those supposed contradictions. But yeah, you look at the Genesis passage. Okay, Genesis 1:14. Okay, let me see. God said that there be lights in the... Okay, so these are stars. This is the creation of stars. Yeah, stars. And then it goes on to the sun and the moon. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think this entire passage has to do with the creation of what other people worshipped. And the stars and the sun and the moon were all deities, especially in Egypt and in the ancient Near Eastern world. They have divine attributes, and God is the one creating them, which means they're created things rather than deities to be worshipped. That's my primary view of the creation account. That it is a polemical argument against ancient polytheism. That
Sorry,
argument only
I don't
flies
get
with
you
certain
there.
kinds of Christians. Let me put it that way.
So you're saying that God created the stars and the moon, but they were actually gods? What? I don't get it. Sorry, I wasn't
No,
listening properly.
the sun and the moon and the stars were worshipped as deities in the ancient world. I'm not saying they are deities. I'm saying they were worshipped as deities.
Okay.
And in the literature, there's a presentation that the God of Israel creates these objects that are worshipped as deities as to portray these deities that they're worshiping are nothing but created things by the one true God. So essentially the conclusion would be, why would you worship these things?
Sorry. So yeah, but Genesis has nothing to do with other religions, doesn't it?
That's
Or other
that's what
gods.
that's what you think. That's because you have an untrained eye in looking at Genesis.
Wait, so you're saying that Genesis is getting their ideas from other religions, basically?
That's not what
Sorry,
I'm
I
saying.
don't get it.
No, what I'm saying is that in the literature, it's proving that the God that the Israelites are worshiping is the creator of all things. And anything else that is worshipped in creation should not be worshipped. So I'll
But that
show
doesn't.
this
Yeah,
from.
but Genesis doesn't prove not to worship other gods. I was just talking specifically on
Sorry,
that
Genesis.
verse. It doesn't
It
talk
doesn't.
about.
Well, continue reading. For example, do you think there was a word for moon and sun in Hebrew?
No,
Let me
I don't
just
know.
make it. Let me just
Not
save you the
expert.
trouble. Let me just save you the trouble. There he is. But if you continue on reading the passage, it says, "And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night." Why does it not call them the sun and the moon? Well, there's reasons for these things, because the Egyptians predominantly, their chief god was the sun god. Ra is the sun god. They literally worship the sun as God, the greater light. So
Okay.
here, what you're seeing in this literature, I mean, again, you don't even have to believe this literature is true, but if you want to look at the literature properly, the literature is showing that the Egyptians should not worship the sun because it is a created thing. Do you know what an argumentative, or a polemical essay is?
Nah, man.
Okay,
You
so
don't have to be an expert on religion to be an atheist. You just gotta read those 100 things, and then you'll say, that doesn't follow science. This sounds so right.
yeah, unless it's not a scientific text to begin with, so nobody cares about
There's
what
a lot of
follows what
in
science.
Islam. There's a lot of scientific
I
things.
don't
Like
care
if you
about
follow
Islam, dude. Yeah, I don't care about Islam. I'm not a defender of
yeah,
Islam.
but
I think
there's
Islam is
probably
junk.
scientific mistakes in the Bible as well, like Noah's
Okay,
Ark. That's scientifically wrong,
how?
and the world being created in 7 days. I doubt that as
Again,
well. That's not scientifically.
that is assuming a certain kind of interpretation that not everybody agrees with. Like
I
you're
mean, if
arguing,
you're
what the argument would be like if you and I were in a debate, okay, and you brought these points up, I would just say these are strawman arguments against my positions. That you're setting up,
so I don't even know what strawman
yeah. So
means.
it's
Not
a
that
logic, it's an
explain.
informal logical fallacy. It means, let me just explain it. It means that you're essentially creating a straw man, right? Like a man created from straw that's weak to defeat, and then you're defeating it. And then you think you've won the argument, and you haven't. So, the science doesn't say that the Earth was created in 6 days. And then if we were in the official debate and you got up there and said that, and then my response was, well, I don't believe that. I don't believe that the Bible teaches the Earth was created in 6 literal days. Like, what is your
Doesn't it say
response
that
going
in
to
the
be?
Bible though? In Genesis? Doesn't it
Cor-
say that in Genesis though? It's 7 days, and then
correct.
God got tired, and that's why.
It doesn't say God got tired. It says God rested. It doesn't say he got tired. It the word
Okay. Well, I thought he was supposed to be like all powerful. Why does he need a rest?
it means that he rested from creating. That means he stopped creating. He
Well,
rested,
I
like,
think
like
I,
if I'm doing work, let's just say I'm piling papers, and I said I rested from piling papers. That wouldn't mean I'm tired and I needed to rest. That means I'm no longer doing that activity.
okay. Well, I'll tell you another one, right?
Go for it.
And this is from the website Life Lessons, okay?
Okay.
And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, and was the name thereof. And
Mm-hmm.
Adam gives names to all, cattle, to the fowl, to the air, and to every beast of the field. So Adam knew all the names of all the creatures in the world.
Not necessarily. Some folks think that's the first taxonomic definition we get when it comes to the differentiation between species, and not every single kind. Not every single species, but every single kind of species.
So he named like cats, like he named their common name or their Latin name, whatever they're called. He didn't call every single species, like every ant, every freaking, because like there's
Correct.
millions of animals out there.
Correct. Again, that is assuming a certain kind of literal interpretation here, where I think that is showing us that Adam is created as God's representative to govern the creation that God has created as his representative. And so he has authority over it. As you and
So
I both
Adam,
believe, that human beings have authority over this earth.
wait, so you're basically saying Adam named every creature by himself, according to
That's
Genesis
that's
2,
that's that's not
18,
what I'm
20.
saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the literature is presenting humanity as the ruler of this earth. And the way it's doing that is by talking about Adam naming them, calling them names because he has the authority to distinguish between them.
So he named every single creature that's was living with him in that time.
Okay, it seems to me that you're not listening to what I'm saying.
No, I think I get it. You're basically saying that he was so woke, so educated by God, that he named every animal that he saw in in Eden.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, I want to see where you're going with this. Sure, yes. Let's just say I am saying that.
All right. Well, isn't that he must have got a lot of help from God or educated himself a lot, kept busy doing science and
If
stuff
God
like
exists,
that.
if God exists, would he be able to create you with a great deal of intelligence?
Yeah.
Okay, then.
And so you're saying that Adam got created by God. Do you think Adam was the first human in this on this earth?
Yeah, I believe that.
Do you think there was any humans before Adam?
No, I don't think there were any humans before Adam. If he's the first human,
Uh,
then by definition, there's no other humans before him.
so what do you think about the old dinosaurs and Homo, all the
Well,
other
yeah,
human species?
they're not humans. And dinosaurs are not humans.
Oh, you're talking about he's the first Homo sapien, which is like
Sure, yeah,
300,000 years old.
whatever. Yes,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
And
but
do you
I'm just
think
like
that
you're leading the argument somewhere else. So let's stick to this point. You said, was he so intelligent to name all the animals? And my response was, yeah. Like, if God can create the universe, then he's able to create a human being with a significant amount of intelligence.
okay,
And it's
I'll
by
let
the
you
way,
that one.
there's no
The next
contradiction there.
one.
That's very simple.
I'm not looking for contradiction. Okay, next one. Cain gets a wife from out of nowhere.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, Ca-
Not out of nowhere.
Cain
It's
is
actually a
worried.
town that's mentioned.
Okay, Cain is worried after killing Abel and says, "Everyone who finds me shall slay me." This is a strange concern since there were only two other humans alive at that time,
That's not true.
his parents. And Cain knew his wife, except only woman on earth was Eve, his mother.
Okay, so
Genesis 17.
whoever wrote that needs to read the actual text. Okay, so we're never told actually when Cain runs off and gets a wife and all that stuff, but we are told that Adam and Eve had other children other than Cain, Abel, and Seth. The text literally says they had many other sons and daughters. So one view is that Adam and Eve had other kids, and his wife is one of these other kids. Okay? Another view is that God had created a group of human beings, and Adam and Eve were the representative of these human beings. Okay? Again, there's a great nuance to this conversation. But even if I don't take the group creation and Adam and Eve being the representatives, the text literally says there are other people other than Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, and Seth. So
they weren't the first human beings.
No, that's not what I said. I'm saying the text says that Adam and Eve had other children.
So wait, so you're basically saying that sorry, I don't understand. I didn't understand the Bible.
Okay, let me read it.
I'm just gonna read what Cain said. Okay. And Cain knew his wife, except the only woman on earth was Eve, his mother.
That's
Genesis
not in the Bible.
17.
You're reading that from a website. The Bible doesn't say
No,
that.
Genesis 17 it says. Genesis 17.
Genesis,
Look
it's
up.
not. It's 3:17 probably, or 4:17.
No, 4:17.
Okay.
Yeah.
Genesis 4:17 says Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. Okay, but if you go a little back, it says.
Hello?
Hang on, I'm finding the passage. It'd be easier for me to do this. Hang on. Okay, Genesis 5:4. So Genesis 5, verse 4, it says, this is the genealogy, right? It says, this is the generations of Adam. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. Male and female, he created them, blessed them, so on and so forth. When Adam had lived 130 years, fathered a son, his own likeness, he named him Seth. And the days of Adam after he fathered Seth were 800 years. And he had other sons and daughters. So the text clearly tells us that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters. So the website that you're reading from that says Cain went and found a wife, but this can't be because the only other woman on the planet was Eve, is literally untrue when it comes to what the text of the Bible says.
Wait, so you're basically saying that Cain had got a wife with one of his kids?
No, it'd be one of his sisters.
So incest, basically.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't think geneticists would think that the first human beings, I guess the first evolution of Homo sapiens was probably one person, but I don't think it was only one beginning. Like it was a slow evolution, because when you look at genetics, if you only start with 2 humans, let's say, any species who only has 2 humans and it has incest, that future generations are not going to survive.
Well, there's answers to this, but let me ask you this. So in the evolutionary process, what is the probability and likeness of the same amount or the same group of species all evolving the same traits together and then intermingling and interbreeding together to create correct offspring.
Sorry, say that again. Sorry, I couldn't understand.
So you're talking about like let's just say in the evolutionary process we got this animal that evolves into a human. Okay?
Okay.
Say that's a male. Well,
Okay.
that animal wouldn't have anyone to mate with, right?
Yeah.
Unless it would go back and be able to mate with the animal cousins.
Okay.
Okay. What we're talking about is a group that is evolving together. Unless what you're going to argue for is just two evolving together.
No, I think what happened in human evolution is that there was probably one mutation that caused humans to become Homo sapien, but they also had other genetics that were not Homo sapiens, so they slowly became Homo sapiens.
Sean, this doesn't bother me, man. Like, you can believe in evolution and be a Christian.
Yeah, but if you want to take the text literally, it's not scientifically correct.
You don't have to take the text literally.
Yes, but a scientist can look at the text and criticize it. But like a biologist will look at this and say this is wrong. This cannot happen in scientific evolution-wise. It's not possible.
Unless they look at the text in its ancient Near Eastern context and are able to reconcile that.
Yeah,
you know who Francis Collins is?
Yeah, he's probably a scientist, biologist, or physicist. What is he, a physicist or biologist?
Francis Collins was the head of the Human Genome Project. Okay? He's a physician and geneticist.
I know that. You could still be a scientist, but the majority of scientists are atheists nowadays.
I'm just telling you, that's not true. I don't know where you heard that. You keep repeating it. Stop doing that.
Well, look it up there on the internet.
I have looked it up there. It's about a 51-49 split. So that's not a majority. I've looked at the data. Right. I'm not just talking about from midair. I'm not just randomly throwing stuff out there. Okay?
Yeah, okay. Well, genetics is a science.
Okay.
And you don't have to believe in the Bible to believe in genetics neither. So what's your point?
That's what?
Yeah, so you're saying that
what I'm saying is someone like Francis Collins who believes in evolution. By the way, there's a really good interview it's an interview with him, Richard Dawkins, on a radio show / podcast called Unbelievable. You should go check it out. That's Richard Dawkins sitting and talking to Francis Collins. What I'm saying is Francis Collins believes in evolution. Okay, Francis Collins believes in evolution. Now, I disagree with him. Okay? I don't believe in evolution. But Francis Collins does. And he's a Christian. I consider him... Hang on. I believe Francis Collins is a Christian.
Yeah.
I could disagree with him on certain matters, theologically. And I could even demand of him to ask or answer my questions when it comes to the validity of his position in comparison to what I think the teachings of the Bible are in X, Y, and Z. But it is not the case for somebody to say, I believe in evolution, therefore God doesn't exist. Those two things do not follow, because there's many people that think God guided the evolutionary process. And that is a more reasonable position to take in their minds. And these are highly respected scientists who believe this. The question is not whether I believe... hang on. The question is not whether Arthur believes in evolution or not. Who cares? The question is whether you can be a Christian and a scientist, whether you could be a Christian and view Genesis not through the lens you're looking at, where every single one of your arguments and all the websites you're looking at are arguing against one view. And if somebody doesn't hold that view, then it just falls apart. It just becomes junk. It's pointless to even bring those arguments up. Every single one of the arguments you brought up, I could just say, I don't believe that. And I completely remove your ammunition.
I'll just go to the next one, okay? Lot offers his virgin daughters to the mob to do what you
to
like
rape
with
them
them.
because Lot is a moron.
Okay, look, I have 2 daughters.
Yeah, I know the text, bro. I
them.
have the text memorized. Like essentially, like I don't need like you tell me what your issue is, and I tell you what the answer is. Lot is not doing something correct. The Bible doesn't tell us to do that. The Bible contains many people doing many wrong things. You realize one of David's one of David's sons rapes one of his daughters, his own sister, and then the other brother kills that brother for doing that. These are
stories. You think we should ban the Bible?
No,
for bad. Because they banned books in Florida for gay stuff. It's the same stuff in the Bible. Same stuff. There's loads of incest and bad things happen in the Bible.
That's an equivocation fallacy. Those books that were banned had pictures in them. The Bible is not a picture book. Last I checked.
Yeah, well, you can have pictures. You can make. Can have children's Bible version. You should have a Bible version of all the bad things that happen for kids in the Bible. Why don't you do that?
I have one. It's called the Children's Bible. It doesn't have those stories in them.
Yeah, but why isn't there pictures of rape and all that in the children's version?
Because they're for children. Are you nuts? The Bible is an adult book.
Yeah, so why do you only cherry pick the good things in the Bible for a kid?
We don't. They're age appropriate. As a person grows up, you expose them to more and more of the text.
All right, I'll let you win on that one. Okay.
You're not letting me win.
I'll let you win on that one. Sorry. Okay, Jacob wrestles with God and wins.
Yes.
Jacob wrestles with God and wins.
He doesn't win.
Huh?
He doesn't win.
Okay, well, this website must be shit.
Yes, thank you very much. So get yourself some better websites, or better yet, read the Bible for yourself. Right. So Sean,
no, it couldn't be boxed. I read about half of it. Revelations is absolutely mad. When I was a kid, I read it.
That's because you don't know what you're reading. Hey man, the reality is that you don't know what you're reading, and you're immediately reading complicated text, and that's why you're having an issue. I'll tell you this. Jacob wrestles with God, and it's essentially a stalemate. But it's whatever. Let's just put it there. He doesn't win because God ends up breaking his hip to show him that he needs to be humble. Like, I haven't seen you going into a fight and then walk away with a broken hip for the rest of your life. You're limping and say, "Man, nothing happened to the other guy, but I won that one." Right? Again, if people are going to present arguments against Christianity, I don't mind it, but they have to be fair in the arguments they're presenting against Christianity. That's all. So
these are not fair.
No,
they're website, lame. They're not.
Those are some of the lamest arguments that I've come across. Bro, I've visited so many websites like that. Like, trust me, like there's a lot better ammunition. But like, supposed conscience. Oh, look what Lot does, and look what David does. Yes, the Bible has narrative in there where people do wrong stuff. Like, do you think some atheist guy who's writing this website is the first person to come across that story? Like, no Christian for 2,000 years has noticed that story. I mean, we're the ones seriously reading this book. So we have plenty of literature answering every single one of these concerns.
No. I think the flood is one of the maddest things in the Bible. I mean, scientifically, that is not.
There's plenty of evidence there's plenty of evidence, by the way, historical evidence for worldwide
local floods, but there's not enough water in the physical earth itself to cover the world in like 40 days. Scientifically, anyway. If you would melt all the ice in the world, you would still not be able to cover the whole earth in 40 days.
Unless there's other things that are
you talk about miracles.
No. Evaporation. There's plenty of stuff that can go into the conversation that could lessen the water currently. And I don't know When the
So you're
argument is there's
saying
not
that the
enough water in the
atmosphere
world.
released, like the sun evaporated the water from the earth slowly. I don't think that's physically possible. I don't think the water in the earth itself has ever escaped this planet. I could be wrong, but it's
Yeah,
probably very literal.
I don't know how you would measure that, considering that soil sucks up water. Like it to me, that seems like a no-go in regards to like how you would prove that scientifically. Like there is not enough
No, there's
water.
science. If you look into it, there's a lot of scientists that
How
can
much water is
disprove.
in the soil? Can somebody tell us how much water is in the soil? They can't.
There's a lot of water in the underground. It's
Brother,
fresh.
I've seen people think that the Sahara Desert used to be covered with water.
Yes, there was a forest in the Sahara. There's
Okay,
like
so if the
10,000
Sahara
years ago.
Desert was covered with water and there was a forest in
It
there and
wasn't
there
covered
isn't
with
now,
water.
that clearly
It
says
wasn't
there was
covered with
more
water.
water.
It wasn't covered with water. It was covered in a forest, tropical forest. It wasn't covered
Okay,
in water.
which would require water.
Yes, but it's not covering it like a
Okay,
lake or something,
but okay, let's just even go with what you're saying. The Sahara Desert is gigantic.
right?
If there was enough water in the soil for it to maintain that, that would mean the conditions of the earth were different as well.
So you're
So
basically saying that all the water evaporated from the earth and came down as rain and flooded the world. Is that what you're trying
no,
to say?
that's actually not what the Bible says. The Bible both speaks about rain coming, but also water from the ground bursting forth.
Rising.
Huh?
Yeah, but that's not possible. No, because even if, let's say there was loads of water on the ground and it came up, um, uh, well, it could be possible in a miracle, but physics-wise,
No, hang on.
there has never, geologically, if you're a geologist, they will, no
Okay.
geologist will tell you that the global flood is
So
possible.
that's not true.
Maybe,
Number one.
maybe
Okay.
the guy there who says ancient civilizations. What's that guy called? Ancient
Okay. So
civilizations.
yeah. So no,
He's a quack. He's not scientific. He's a pseudoscience guy.
Sean, hang on. You can't just throw out random facts that you can't back up, like saying majority of scientists are atheists.
If you go to atheist scientists, they'll be able to explain this better than me. I'm not a.
Yeah, if you go to Christian scientists, they'll be able to explain it more than me. So why are we having this conversation?
They have a different explanation.
So why would you bring this up?
Scientists, because there's loads of things in the Bible that are wrong that can be proven wrong better than me. But I'm still going to try and do some using this website. Okay. 70 people become several million in less than 40 years during Exodus. Oh, is that real?
What? 70 people
70
become
people become several million in less than 40 years during Exodus. Is that true?
Is that the website what actually says?
Yeah, 70 people.
So here's what you need to do.
Genesis 40,
you need to
46,
okay.
27.
Listen to me.
Exodus.
It's 400 years.
1.5.
It's 400 years.
I thought it was 4. It says 4. Okay. So, I'll just read you what it says here. 70 people, Genesis 46 to 27, Exodus 1 to 5, become several million in less than 40 years during Exodus.
Then
the Israelite population went from.
Okay. Just X out of that website, because it's very clearly got wrong information in there. Okay, it's 400 years.
Right. Well, no. Let's just read Genesis 46 to 27. Is that really long, or is it?
Hang on. Genesis 46, 27.
Might be too much reading involved in Genesis.
No, it's
like
Genesis 46, 27 says, and the sons of Joseph who were born to him were 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob who came to Egypt were 70.
Right.
And then Exodus what?
1 to 5. 1 to 5.
Chapter 1 to 5?
Exodus 1 to
5.
5. I don't know how to say it.
Oh, 1, 2 to 5. Okay, Reuben,
No,
Simeon, Levi,
1 5.
1,
1
5.
5.
All the descendants of Jacob
Yeah.
were 70 persons. Joseph was already in Egypt. Yeah, it just repeats the same exact thing, that there were 70 people who went to Egypt.
Okay.
But we know there were 70 people who went to Egypt. That's agreed on.
Okay.
It's what they're wrong about in that website is the amount of time between Joseph and Moses, which is not 40 years.
Bad website. The Israelite population went from 70 to several million, over 60,000 adult males in 400 years.
400 years. Yes.
Yeah, it says it down here. So what's so bad? I don't know what the fuck. Okay, what do you sin without knowing it? If you sin without knowing that you've done anything wrong, kill an unblemished ram for God.
Yeah, so there are laws in the Old Testament. Hang on. I know the references. In the book of Leviticus, there are laws which gives you a sacrificial offering for unintentional sins, wrongs you've done unintentionally. What's wrong with that?
Sounds weird.
Do you ever do unintentional wrong things?
Well, like mistakes, I guess.
Well, you do something wrong.
But they're not sin.
Well, you might commit sins on it. So again, this is like it would. I would have to explain to you what they would consider sins, because when you think of sin, you're immediately thinking of moral things, right? So you're thinking about murder and X, Y, and Z. When they're thinking about sins, they're thinking about like ceremonial uncleanliness, touching things that they ought not touch. Those things are all included in there. And so therefore there are purification sacrifices they do. And that's a part of it. It's not just moral wrongs that you do. It's not like, oh, whatever, like I lied or I accidentally lied or something like that. So the conversation, again, has to do with the entire ceremonial system that the Israelites were under, rather than us reading our moral system onto it and say, why would these guys have to sacrifice an animal? Because they could have unintentionally become ceremonially unclean or unintentionally done things that God didn't want them to do. There's no contradiction there. Like, somebody might not like it, but who cares?
Why does God care about your foreskin?
That's actually on the website.
No. Here is some good advice from God. Circumcise the foreskin of your heart. Hell does that mean? Deuteronomy 10:16.
The context there would be that you need to become a part of God's people, because that was the sign of being God's people. But you got to do it like internally.
Why does he care about your pee-pee? What's so special? Why does God have a weird fetish with people's pee-pees?
Sean, you're being a bit disingenuous there. You're being silly.
He's all powerful. Why does he care about this? Why does he not care about slavery and stuff like that back in the day?
Well, again, for someone who hasn't read the Bible, you seem to have a lot of opinions on the Bible.
Yeah. Well,
okay,
you can
read the book, man.
Like
you're asking me, why would God? So you're asking me. So hang on. You're asking me about something that God establishes as a covenant that's very important to the biblical narrative in regards to a sign of being God's people, and specifically that one. Circumcision is the sign of being God's people. Circumcision was not a thing that was uncommon to the ancient world, by the way.
So God was copying the ancient people. He said, I like that. I'm going to copy it. So he told it to the Jews.
I wouldn't have an issue with saying that God speaks within a historical context to a group of people. He uses the same language. He uses many things like that. I wouldn't say it's copying, but God speaks to people within their historical context. That's very clearly the case when it comes to theology.
If he came in our time, if he was coming in our time, he'd be talking our kind of morals and language.
Well, I would say if God were, culture. Yeah, I would say so, right? I would say if God was giving us laws today, that would be.
If he came in our time, he'd say, okay, it's fine. Don't worry about that gay stuff. It's all cool. the morals have changed. You don't have to cut your
No,
pee-pee hole. Is that
you
what
seem
he
to be
said?
making leaps in your logic there, Sean.
Well,
You
you're
go
basically saying that
you go
God was
from
copying.
stop. You go from ceremonial stuff and jump immediately into moral things. And that is a very simple mistake you shouldn't be making.
But cutting your pee-pee hole is kind of a moral thing, no?
But no, okay, you should look up what circumcision is before you.
Yeah, I know what it is. It's
Okay.
for cleanliness. I heard back
No,
in the
no,
day it was
yeah,
for the
sure.
desert.
There could be many reasons,
And
but
it's also for stopping people having pleasure as well. Men having pleasure
it's for
from the
that. I
foreskin.
wouldn't say it's for that.
No, I heard that foreskin makes
It
your
it could be a
penis have more.
byproduct. Sure, it could be a byproduct of that, but I wouldn't say it's for that.
Yeah, so what is
You
the main
realize the
reason?
difference
It's
there. You
for,
realize the
I
difference there,
heard
right?
uh,
Like
other reasons were
imagine if I took
hygiene.
this. So hang on, stop. Imagine if I took this, okay, and I said, this is for poking out someone's eye or like bashing them over the head. You would say, no, it's not for that. It's a container for holding liquid, but it could be used for that. So it could be a consequence of that. I'm not arguing that necessarily. And by the way, the New Testament doesn't tell us that we have to get circumcised. But that is a sign that is given to the people of God, and that the people of God, as a sign of being the people of God, adhere to. I don't know what the problem is there. Your question that
All
why
right, I'll
does
let you go on
God
that
care
one.
about this? I would just say because God wants to give a sign for his people.
Uh, okay, I'll let you go on that one.
By the way, let me just put it this way:
Uh,
as a guy, if you were like, "Yeah, I want to be one of the followers of this God," you better be damn serious about understanding what that means. If you're going to go under the knife or something like that.
well, I'm not gonna do that.
No, I'm just
Sure.
saying you don't have to do that. If you become a Christian, you don't have to do that. We'll just baptize you.
I think if you want to become a Jew, you have to do that.
Correct, but I'm not asking you to become a Jew. I'm telling you to become a Christian. Why would I tell you to become a Jew?
Well, of course, because the Jews are the first guys.
Well,
They're the
this is a
OPs.
Christian
They're the
apology.
OGs.
Sean, this is a Christian apologetics channel. Why would I tell anyone to become a Jew?
So why do Christians in America support Israel so much?
I don't know, man. I have an
Is it
issue with
because
that.
they want to bring back the end of the world? Is it because they want to bring back the end times, the revelations? Is that
Some
why?
do. Some do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. They a lot of the whole problem in the Middle East is mainly to do with religion, and it's all fact because they want to bring back the Temple of Solomon or something.
Sure. Yeah, but
Some mad stuff like.
yeah. So I'm not a big proponent of that because I don't hold to those views, and I don't think the Christians in America should be doing that. But let me tell you this: there were problems in the Middle East before Christianity and Islam. People have been killing each other forever, for the same reason that there's been problems on the island nations that you're living on, and it's been around before Christians
Well,
came
they were
to
they
those
were a
shores.
big part to do with religion. Our problems were a big part to do with religion. 50%
Correct,
of
but
it religion, I'd say.
they were there before Christianity ever came to those shores.
You talked about the problems, the wars against English.
No, I'm talking about the folks that inhabited those islands were killing each other way before Christianity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, before religion.
Yeah.
Religion did not prevent.
They had religion. Don't say before religion
fighting.
because they had religious beliefs.
Yeah. So Christianity does not really prevent war, or Islam. Any religion out there, I think, does not really prevent war as much as they claim they do.
The historians that I've read very clearly, even atheist historians, very clearly would argue that Christianity has prevented many ills in the world and given many goods to the world. So I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here.
Let me just say this,
great.
because you've been on for a while. Folks, if anybody else wants to call in, you're more than welcome to call in, by the way. Sean's just a brave one that calls in and has these conversations. Keanu said, this is a good question. Let me actually address this. Why do Christians get circumcised? Did Paul say it is not necessary? If you do, you'll have to follow all Jewish laws? Keanu, it's American Christians. This is a weird American phenomenon. Christians, especially the historical sorts, right, do not get circumcised. This is not a thing in, as far as I know, in the Catholic churches. This is not a thing in Eastern Orthodoxy. I don't understand why this is such a big thing in the United States. And maybe it's a thing in the Western Europe, I'm not sure. But it's just weird for the rest of the Christian world that Christians, like, so if you talk to my parents who were born and raised in Iran, being circumcised is a Muslim thing. Christians don't do it. If you're a Muslim, you get circumcised, but it's not a thing Christians do. So Paul does say you don't have to get circumcised. And it's very clearly the case. I mean, one of the controversies in the New Testament is that Paul is not essentially teaching that people need to get circumcised. As a matter of fact, he's got some harsh words for those who are. Hang on, Sean. There's some comments that have come in I would like to address.
Okay.
Okay, only 7% of wars are religious wars. And out of the 7%, most religious wars are Islamic. Okay. I don't know where that data is coming from, but it is. Christians support Israel because they're surrounded by Muslims that want to kill all of us. Israel is a democracy. They're allies. Yeah, so I would say that there are religious motivations, but there are also political motivations for why the Americans do what they do. As an American who has Christian Palestinian friends, and when I speak to them, and then kind of you get into both the theology and the politics of it, this gets really, really complicated. And I think a lot of the conversation that I hear that at least are coming from the conservatives in the United States, I'm very unsatisfied with because they don't do justice, right? Like, for example, they'll speak about all Palestinians being Muslims. That's not true. Some of the oldest Christians on the planet are Palestinian Christians. There's churches and Bible colleges in Israel or in Palestine, however you want to say it, that have been closed down by the Israeli government. And I can't support any of that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the last one. 144,000 Jews will be going to heaven. Everyone else is going to hell. Revelation 7, Revelation 14.
Yeah, that's just false. I don't know where you're reading that. It's just stupid.
It's not true?
It speaks about 100
more.
No, it speaks about 144,000 individuals that are set apart for a certain mission. But that's highly symbolic because it's 144,000, which means it's 12,000. By the way, it's not people, it's just guys. And it's not just guys, they're virgin guys. So it's 144,000 virgin men from each tribe of Israel, except it doesn't have the tribe of Dan in there, and it replaces it with one of Joseph's sons. So it's highly symbolic in my opinion. And it's not talking about those people going to heaven and everybody else going to hell. That's just nonsense. Stop reading those stupid websites, man.
Website.
Find like
lifelessons.com. Fake news website.
Yeah, that's what it should be called. Don't listen to us. It was probably written by some like 15-year-old who thinks he understands theology.
There's loads of websites here.
I know.
Right. Yeah, so that's the...
I would just say do your research, man. Do your research. Continue doing your research. And I would just recommend you read...
I need to go to these websites more and call you back.
Okay, have fun. More than welcome. Okay.
I'll get you more bad things in the Bible.
Okay.
I'll prove you wrong.
Even
though I don't read it or anything.
Keep trying, Sean. Keep trying.
All right. I'll
Yeah.
let you go.
Bye. So Dico, who's a bit older than us, is telling us a historical thing. He says circumcision was a health thing in the 70s. That's the way at least it was advertised, I would say, by the way. In the US, it had nothing to do with religion. Correct. It had nothing to do with religion. That's why I said it's an American thing. It's still debated. Yeah, there's quite a bit of people who are against circumcision, and they're very vocal in the United States. Our Israel relationship is very political, correct? They're just an extension of the American empire. That's a very good way of putting it. Again, now I would say that's fine. They can, if the Americans want to defend Israel against foreign threats, the problem, because as an Armenian, and Dico, you know this very well, as an Armenian, I look at it, and currently there's 120,000 Armenians being starved to death by Muslim Azeris, and the United States is extremely silent on the matter. As a matter of fact, it still sells weapons to Azerbaijan. As of today, I read that Aliyev, the dictator of Azerbaijan, has decided to open up the road from Artsakh into Armenia, but only one way, as long as the people are leaving, but they can't come back. I thought to myself, I said, how convenient is this, right? So this guy's been, since November, they've essentially been starving these people. They've ran out of food. They're literally starving to death. And now he's opening up a road and saying, by the way, you guys can go to Armenia, but you guys can't come back to your homes. That's genocide, guys. That is a cultural genocide. But is the United States doing anything about it? Not really. You get these European countries, and I consider the US a part of that, who come up and make a statement. France says that Aliyev should stop this, and the United States says this. But then we got these guys doing backflips, bowing before the Ukrainian president, and throwing money at him like nothing else because they're fighting the evil Russians. Our political priorities, and I mean this when it comes to both political parties, by the way, are so jacked up in this country. We are so inconsistent with the way we view the world and the way we want to actually help people. And that makes complete sense in regards to what you're saying. You're saying that is the relationship is very political and it's an extension of the American empire. And maybe the American empire is looking at it and saying, well, this weird small nation here in the South Caucasus, Armenia, nobody cares. As a matter of fact, as I was driving home earlier on before the stream, I read that news, and my prayer to God was, I don't know what to do, God. It seems like nobody cares. Because in reality, that it seems like nobody cares. And this happened with the 1915 genocide, and nobody cared. That's just the reality of it. Nobody cared. Everybody knew the genocide was happening. We have plenty of evidence that everybody knew the genocide was happening. I mean, stuff was being published in the New York Times about the genocide of the Armenians happening, and nobody cared. And people let it happen. Why? I don't know. I don't know what would justify something like that, but that's just the reality of it. Yeah. And I'm not saying that in an envious way. The ironic thing here is that Israel supports Azerbaijan. And they supplied them with drones to kill Armenians. And Israel, as a country who's gone through a Holocaust, still hasn't recognized the Armenian genocide. So, forgive me if I have mixed feelings towards Israel. And again, that's not towards Israelis, obviously. There's been Armenians living in Israel for a very, very long time. But politically, what they have set up and what they're doing, it's jacked up. There was a whole uproar in Israel when the people found out that the government was supporting and sending money to Azerbaijan. So yeah. Nati, what's up? Nice OBS logo.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, how's it going?
It's
I
going
called,
well.
I think one time here before.
You did. I recognize your name.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it
How's
just
it going?
naughty? Did I
Everything
ask you about
okay?
that?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So how's it going? I was just roaming around the internet, and I saw your channel live, and say, why not? Why not join?
Why not?
Yeah.
How can I help
So
you?
yeah, not really much, but I have some kind of questions. I need like your side of interpretation
Sure.
when it comes to it, and like I would just want to start with Paul. Mm, like, do you think Paul teaching kind of evaded away from Jesus' teaching, mainly speaking? I'm not saying they're different, but because he introduced some like critical um, way of thinking and way of teaching to Christians. And
So, so I would just let Paul speak for himself because he speaks about this.
yeah, but sometimes you wonder, um,
No,
are
what I'm
they
saying
even
is like Paul spoke about his gospel. Like in Galatians 2, Paul says, after 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along with me. And I went up because of a revelation and said before them, though privately before those who seemed influential, that's the leaders of the Jerusalem church, the gospel that I proclaim among the Gentiles, in order to make sure I was not running or had not run in vain. Does this seem like a guy who was trying to invent a different teaching than the one Jesus and his disciples were teaching?
not invent? That would be radical to say, but
Or change or whatever?
no, I'm not saying that really. But it's like it kind of makes Jesus irrelevant sometimes when you see Paul's doctrine.
How?
Let's say, I think you mentioned something about um, not following the law, and like belief in death and resurrection of Jesus Christ will obtain you salvation like in face value. So that's like kind of Paul's teaching. Jesus, aside from the interpretations of the Moses law, he um, he proclaims that like the Son of Man, God is coming, repent from your sins, and all of that.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they're
worship me.
completely different. Go ahead, sorry.
Jesus taught that people should worship him. Jesus taught that people would be saved if they looked upon him as he was lifted up on the cross, as Moses lifted the serpent in the desert. Right?
Yeah, but you have to look at the Gospels. Not like
That is in the Gospels.
not every Gospel is in agreement with what you said.
No, not every gospel has that story, but it doesn't mean they're not in agreement with it.
What
That would
wasn't
be an
it?
argument from silence.
Wasn't it in John? Wasn't it? I think so.
Yeah, regardless, I don't care which gospel it's in. Do the other gospels say this other gospel is wrong? We're not in agreement with it? No. We realize that the Gospel of John is apart from the Synoptics. It's very different. But the Gospel of John has a different purpose to it as well. So it doesn't matter whether the other Gospels don't have it. That doesn't translate into, therefore, they're not in agreement with it. That's not a reasonable conclusion.
I mean, fair enough. It's
Are
all
you
about
trying to
like
say that Jesus was teaching that people should keep the law?
no. Look, all I wanted was like a perspective from your side. It's not even like to prove
Yeah.
anything wrong. Like I just want to like show you, what if it was like that? How would you proclaim it and hear
I
your
would say
thoughts on
if
it?
Paul was preaching and or had changed anything different than what Jesus was preaching, then the disciples would have shut him down and not allowed for his teaching to happen. But we see the complete opposite of that. We see
Okay.
the disciples approving it. We see Peter saying that Paul's writings are equivalent to Scripture. They're hard to understand. So my interpretation is that he's not preaching a different gospel at all. He is preaching the gospel to the Gentiles, which is believe in the Lord Jesus, confess with your heart, believe in your heart, confess with your mouth that Jesus died and was raised on the third day, and you will be saved. And now, situationally, depending on where he was and what he was talking to, I think some practical aspects changed. But Christianity teaches that there's a covenantal difference. There's a new covenant that has come into place, and that new covenant has new regulations. And because it has new regulations, we are not to live by the old regulations. So in the Gospel of Mark, when Jesus makes a statement about food, and Mark in parentheses says, by saying this, Jesus made all foods clean, that's not saying keep all the Old Testament eating regulations. That's saying all food is clean now. You can eat anything you want. And that's in Mark. And if we go with the historical, traditional writing of Mark, Mark is being dictated by Peter.
Hold on. Sorry. You said all food is clean?
Let me read you the passage.
I don't want to misheard you.
Let me read you the passage.
Yeah, I kind of remember the passage, but it's your interpretation that I wanted to hear again. So you say pork and other shellfish is going to be allowed.
It is allowed, correct?
Due to that passage.
Yeah, Mark 7:19, and that's the way Christians practice this stuff. And even so, sorry, 19. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong passage. Okay, so starting with verse 18, it says, and he said to them, then are you also without understanding? Do you not set that whatever goes into a person from the outside cannot defile him? Meaning whatever you're eating that comes into you from the outside does not defile you. Okay? Since it enters not in his heart, but into his stomach and is expelled. This is Jesus saying this, by the way. And then in parentheses, it says, thus he declared all foods clean. And then Jesus goes on in verse 20 to say, and he said, what comes out of a person is what defiles him. For from within, out of the heart of man, evil comes, or come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person. Very clearly, Jesus here is teaching that what makes someone unclean and defiled is whatever comes from their heart internally, not what you input into your mouth and you eat. And it's not my interpretation that says he made all foods clean. It is Mark putting that in parentheses in the text saying, therefore he declared all food clean. And again, if we go with the traditional stuff, then Peter's the one dictating this to be written to Paul. If you read the whole text here, by the way, this would be Mark 7:14 to 23. It's very clearly a teaching by Jesus on you and I, the defilement or the uncleanliness that is in our hearts and in our lives and the way we are sinners is not from the stuff that we eat. This is, again, it's maybe hard for some people to understand, but there is an old covenant, and then in the old covenant, there's an expectation of a new covenant to come. That's attested to in many places in the Old Testament, but we'll just go with Jeremiah 31, where I will be their God, they will be my people, my law will be written on their hearts, X, Y, and Z. The Joel passage where God will shower his spirit on all flesh, and everybody will be filled with the Holy Spirit. That's every believing person, every person of God will be filled with the Holy Spirit. And then we see this coming to its culmination and fulfillment in the New Testament, and the New Testament authors say, hey, look, it's the new covenant. There's a new way these things are going to be done. If you go to Acts 15, there's a conversation about eating and circumcision predominantly and why we shouldn't get circumcised. We were just speaking about that earlier. And Acts 15 is Paul actually in Jerusalem having a conversation about what should we do with these Gentiles. So Jesus was not teaching that his followers should be keeping the old covenant, or that whoever is going to come beyond that is keeping. He kept the old covenant because he was under the old covenant and he kept it perfectly. That goes alongside why he's the perfect sacrifice for our sins. But in many places, Jesus violated the extra ceremonial laws they had put around these things to prove a point. For example, doing work on the Sabbath. Now, not doing work of a certain sort, but he definitely, healed people on the Sabbath, for example, and they told him, "Why are you doing work?" And he said, "Well, I don't want to go into the details of that." But this idea that Jesus was this law keeper and wanted everybody to keep the Mosaic commandment and stuff is very evidently the case in the New Testament, that he's not for that. He speaks about old wineskin and new wineskin. He speaks about how there's a new way that things are being done that the old ways cannot contain. They will burst. So, yeah, frankly, I don't understand how anybody gets caught up in this.
I hear what you say, but look, we could say he evolved the laws because let's not forget there is the Sermon on the Mount where he kind of, actually, I would say make it strict, the laws of Moses. You shall not commit adultery. Jesus says, "Don't even think about it." Such and such things.
Okay.
That you could consider it as a new covenant, but the law is still there. You can say it's redacted. You can say it's updated. You can say it becomes relevant for the early Christians at the time. But I was thinking that as a background when I asked you that question.
Yeah. I would just say Jesus is actually not doing any of that stuff in the Sermon on the Mount. What Jesus is doing is showing that the heart is what really matters on the subject when it comes to, like, where does murder come from? Why do people murder one another? Well, it comes from the heart. It comes from anger. In order for you to murder someone, you got to be angry at them first, right? Again, we're talking about a certain kind of murder here, but in order for somebody to go commit adultery, they're going to lust in their hearts after that person, and then they're going to go commit adultery. So
from Jesus' lens, you can say, yeah, it comes from the heart, but not every circumstance is correct. You might be defending yourself, and the assailant, he might die in your hands. That's not that.
Yeah, but
that
that's not.
mean
Then that wouldn't be classified as murder.
You're just defending yourself.
That wouldn't be that would not be considered murder, even under Old Testament law.
I don't know. Murder is murder, as far as I know.
No, murder means the unjustified taking of life. That it's very different than what the word for killing is. As a matter of fact, there's two different Hebrew words for those things in the Old Testament. To kill someone is very different than to murder them. Murder has one meaning. It's not self-defense. That's never in the Bible stated that you can't take a life. As a matter of fact, we see plenty of places after the law is given where people take lives. And nobody sits there and says, "Hey, you guys think we're messing up with this old law that was given to us?" Right? Like, Moses gives the law and then they go into Canaan and they have all these wars and kill a bunch of people. And not one person kind of goes, Because one has to do with murder and the other one has to do with killing. And in that case, it's killing in war.
Okay.
And they're just different words. I mean, I'm just saying that's, like, you ask a Jew that, they'll tell you exactly the same thing I just told you.
I don't know Jews believe in New Testament, did they?
No, I'm talking about the Old Testament law that it's in the 10 Commandments that you shall not murder. Jesus is repeating it when he says, "You have heard it said, do not murder." He's quoting the Old Testament.
I'm not talking about the actual murder. I'm talking about where the murder comes from. And I gave you that example. That was my example. I don't know if you.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that if I kill someone who's attacking me, it's not murder. I'm defending myself. There was no anger in my heart to murder them.
So what would you call it then?
I would
There's
call
no the
it
word self-defense in the Bible, as far as I
I'd
know.
call it killing. I'd killed that person. I took their life. But it's not murder.
Killing? What kind of killing is that? It's not in the Bible.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be in the Bible. It's not in the Bible that you shouldn't be eating your
So
car. But
it's going to be
stupid.
subjective. If it's not there,
It's not
everything's going to be
subjective.
subjective.
No, it's not subjective. I'm telling you, the context to the original law has to do with murdering people. With the classical definition of murder, not self-defense, not taking someone's life during war, nothing that. It has to do with unjustified taking of a life. That's what is classified as murder. Look, it's not enough if you're going to have conversations about the Bible, it is not enough to say something is not the Bible. There's many things that are not in the Bible. Okay?
That leaves everything to be interpreted as everyone
Do
wants.
you belong to a specific religion?
No, I don't, actually.
Okay, so you're an atheist, agnostic, something like that?
No, I think I came here before, so it's not, non-believer is a good way to
Okay.
describe me.
Yeah.
Or
Sorry,
former
I don't
Christian.
remember. I have conversations with a lot of people, and forgive me if I don't remember.
No worries. No worries. Non-Christian would be.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily allow for you to do anything that you want to do. It's what I'm saying is that then you take principles and you apply them, right? So, for example, the Bible doesn't have anything about pornography in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's, don't look at any porn on your computer. Like, you're not going to find that in the Bible for obvious reasons. But the Bible speaks about lust.
That's kind of is pretty straightforward, wasn't it?
Correct. So is murder. Because the word has a definition to it in its context.
I'm saying self-defense is not there.
Because the word excludes that. I'm not trying to be difficult here. Like, when you use a certain word like murder, it excludes, by definition, self-defense. Meaning, whatever it is that you're doing, the murdering, does not include self-defense. Because self-defense is justifiable. It's in the word. Like,
I suppose it's fair enough.
What do you think? What do you think about when you hear the word murder?
Someone killing someone
But that's not a good definition, right?
That it is not, because
the
word murder could be defined, categorized, and interpreted in so many different ways.
Like, for example, what?
For example, there's like a premeditated, planned murder.
Correct.
There's one that is spontaneous.
Yes.
That could just
Passion.
happen.
Yeah.
Passion. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good. That's a good.
Yeah,
word
but
there.
Notice that we're not disagreeing on the murder happening. The reason why we create those categories is to determine the kind of punishment we're going to give to the person. So the categorization of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, murder of passion, X, Y, and Z, premeditated murder, right? They're all murder. It's just we categorize them because then we can give them a proper punishment. So if it's premeditated murder, for example, then you could say, hey, we're going to, give them the death sentence or life in prison or something like that, because this person sat there and thought about it and planned it out and then went on and did it. Where maybe, that would be, let's just say, without parole. But a murder of passion might be life imprisonment, but with the possibility of parole, because the person got heated in the moment and acted in this rash way, as opposed to, say, you accidentally run someone over. And then, so that there's different. The problem becomes in the biblical context, when you murder someone, your punishment is death. There is no other punishment. It's got one punishment, so it doesn't need to categorize it. And it just assumes you've done this, and then here's the punishment, and then excludes self-defense, war from it. And then we would have to read the Levitical laws to show that there's exceptions to all of these things. This is just the way that laws work, obviously. But when Jesus, again, is quoting from the Old Testament, he has that in mind. And so having that in mind, he doesn't need to say, but, self-defense is a different issue. Like, he doesn't need to categorize that at all.
No, fair enough. Just want to have a discussion. It wasn't like
Yeah, no, I mean, look, these are really good questions, because I know a lot of people who will have the Ten Commandments memorized, like in the King James version, which is "Thou shalt not kill," and they just think that's just speaking about. But in 1611, when that was translated, the word "kill" meant murder, and that's why there is no modern translation of the Bible that you will pick up where it will say "kill." Every single modern translation of the Bible you pick up is going to say, "You shall not murder." Okay.
Let me ask you, just curiosity. Would you consider? May I ask what's your denomination first before I ask this question?
I'm not. I don't hold to any specific denomination.
Okay, so it's gonna come with like a general question. Do you believe Old Testament laws are redundant or kind of replaced with the New Testament as a covenant? Is that how you view things? Because let's say Orthodox Christianity, they still uphold the Old Testament laws, and some other denominations uphold those laws still, and they are
Yeah, I'm
applicable
unaware which one of the
in
Old
practice.
Testament laws that the Orthodox hold to.
For example, not eating pork, like keeping kosher.
That's not true. Orthodox Christians eat pork.
Oriental Orthodox,
Oriental Orthodox don't eat it?
no.
That's not true.
I don't know what to tell you.
I
came
grew up
up from
Armenian.
that.
I grew up Armenian Oriental Orthodox. There's more pork in Armenia than any other meat.
I came out of that, and
I would
it
just
might be
say
different.
that might
Look,
be an interesting Ethiopian thing, man, because the
look,
Ethiopian church.
it might be different with different denominations, but
I
it
would
is not
say
allowed.
you might want to look at why the Ethiopians don't do that. And I
I
would
know
say
why.
if they don't, they're the exception in it.
I know the reason, but
Okay.
why
Yeah,
I
I'm just
ask
saying
is,
Orthodox, like if we want to talk about generally the church, the Catholics, the
there are
Eastern
churches.
Orthodox, the Oriental Orthodox, they don't have laws about not eating pork or keeping kosher.
The law is already there in the Old Testament. Why do you need to write about it? It's already there. You just need to uphold it or not, or replace it or
The
not, I
law is
suppose.
there for specific reasons. And since the coming of the Messiah, according to the book of Hebrews, it speaks about that the law is now obsolete. So that's in the book of Hebrews. I'll give you the passage and verse right now. Hang on.
I'm not saying it's not in the Bible. It is in the Bible. I know it's there in the
So
Bible.
if the Bible
But
talks about the law,
are you saying, are they wrong, or
yes, I would
okay,
say they're
so
wrong. Look, I would say they're wrong. If individuals don't want to eat pork,
it's not individual? No,
look,
it's
even a
the whole
community of
country.
people, let's just say like 15 of my friends caught together, or let's just say it was 15 of us and then it ended up being like 2,000 of us, right? And we all got together and we felt really convicted over eating shrimp. And we decided that as Christians, we weren't going to eat shrimp. I would not pass judgment over them. I would say, you don't want to eat shrimp? Don't eat shrimp. It's in your liberty in Christ not to eat, not to drink, not to do any of the stuff that you don't want to do. If I hung out with the people that you're talking about and I invited them to my house, I would not serve them pork. And I wouldn't talk down on them and I wouldn't accuse them of X, Y, and Z. The only difference would be if they said, you guys are all wrong for eating pork because we're supposed to keep these laws, then I would say, no, you're wrong, because that becomes a scriptural discussion rather than a discussion of conscience. And Paul speaks about this in the New Testament when he speaks about, hey, don't judge a brother who eats everything, and those who eat everything, don't look down on one who doesn't eat everything. Like, it literally says those words. So clearly in the New Testament
it's for the
church.
Gentiles, isn't it?
Yeah, but the Gentiles and the Jews were having issues. Gentile and Jew Christians were having issues because the Jewish ones were still keeping kosher law and the Gentiles weren't. And these guys were judging these other ones and the other ones were looking down on them. And so he's saying, don't do that because at the end of the day, they're all doing it unto the Lord. The New Testament answers these questions. And I would just refer to the book of Hebrews where it says, when it's talking about the law, it says the law is now old and it's becoming obsolete, meaning unnecessary. So the reason why we don't keep law is because the New Testament tells us we don't have to keep the law. It's not because we just decided one day not to. Like, it's literally in the text of the New Testament. Now, again, if individuals or groups of people, again, even if denominations and churches,
it is not groups because there are denominations.
That's fine. Like, I wouldn't come down on them.
Search. I mean, from top of my head, my previous religion, I think Messianic Judaism have also practiced that.
Messianic Judaism would do that, yes, because they keep law. As a matter of fact, next week I'm going to have a Messianic rabbi on.
Yeah,
and we're gonna be talking about this issue.
Not to trust me. Those people are clueless, or what? So what's the takeaway from that?
Maybe so. I'll tell you this. Next Thursday, hang on, not next Thursday. The following Thursday, I think. Yeah, because next Thursday I got someone else coming on. So in 2 Thursdays, I'm gonna have a Messianic rabbi coming on. And we're going to be having conversations about these things. Why he doesn't eat pork and why I eat pork and why that's okay in his mind or even in my mind for him not to eat pork. The issue for me always becomes about whether people say things like, if you eat it, it is a sin. If this happens, it's against the Bible. Like, whenever these sorts of things are about a part of the conversation, then I'm going to push back. But I think we have enough liberties as Christians not to partake in the things that we're speaking about. Colossians 2:16, someone quoted, "Therefore, let no one pass judgment on you in questions of food or drink or with regard to a festival or a new moon or a Sabbath." And this includes food and keeping certain holidays, whether people are keeping Sabbath or not. So that's a good passage. That's Colossians 2:16.
Yeah, Paul said that, but Jesus did not say that.
Correct, but yeah, I'm not understanding why there is this crazy distinction between Paul and Jesus. Like, if we make the case that Paul ran his gospel by the disciples to make sure what he was preaching what was in accordance to what they had been taught to preach, and the disciples were like, yes, why are we making an issue of Paul?
We don't want to go to the literature of the Bible because some of the stuff written there doesn't even go to the real actual author's claim to be.
Okay, that's going to lead us somewhere else. I'd prefer not to do that.
I know. That's why I'm trying to avoid that area.
But what I'm saying is I textually showed so that Paul, in the book of Acts, there's literally no debate over Luke writing Acts and all that. People thought Luke wrote Acts.
The author of Luke, not Luke, actually. The author of Luke, not Luke himself.
About what? Writing the...
So when you say Luke wrote it, I want you to say the author of Luke Gospel.
I believe Luke wrote the Gospel of Luke.
That's theology, but when we come to like general consensus, there's no general consensus that say it is Luke himself that wrote the act.
I would trust the historical early documentation on who wrote these books rather than...
I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's not.
That's fine. That's neither here nor there.
I want to point it out.
That's fine. If I were to say the author of the book of Acts says Paul went to Jerusalem and had this conversation with the disciples, and the disciples said, "Yeah, we're okay with the gospel that you're preaching." He continues preaching his gospel. I have no reason to doubt that, especially when we're talking about what the New Testament teaches. Because the New Testament is, unless somebody's going to say, well, I'm a Christian, but I deny the New Testament, I'm going to do this some other way, then I don't know what they're going to come across at that point, right? Like, so you there is no, like, the give and take here. If I'm going to be a Christian, I got to trust these things, or else, like, what does it mean to be a Christian? Removed from that, well, I'm just going to keep the Old Testament kind of stuff. Well, then I would say you are not really looking at the Messiah the way the Messiah should be looked at.
Do you consider them, for example, people who still uphold Jewish practices and laws, um, like lesser Christians
No,
than the others,
no, I do not.
or are they believing in something else than the?
No, I don't. Like, if they don't want to eat pork and they don't want to do whatever, they want to keep ceremonial stuff, they want to keep kosher, I'm fine. Like I said, I'm going to have a rabbi on and we're going to be talking about this. By the way, the rabbi is a Christian Messianic Jew. And we're going to be speaking about, like, I have no issues. If he's like, I don't want to eat pork, if I'm going to go out with him for lunch, I won't have pork. For the sake of my brother, I won't have pork. I don't look down on him. As long as he doesn't go around saying, if I'm eating pork alone, let's just say with my family, that I'm in sin, then we have a scriptural issue there. I still wouldn't look down on him. And I still wouldn't see them as a lesser Christian or something. They're saved as much as I'm saved, even if they're theologically wrong. I don't have an issue saying people are saved and Christians, even if they're theologically wrong. That's neither here, there, near, or there for me.
Okay, that's fair enough, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think it's our place to pass that kind of a judgment on people, by the way. I think the New Testament is very clear about that. I think Romans speaks about this. I think the passage in Colossians we just read speaks about this, right? Like, it's not my place to judge them for refraining to do certain things. If their conscience is bothered and I know about it, I will do my best to, for the duration of the time I'm with them, not become a stumbling block for them.
You are not. I would just.
No, I'm saying, but it could be for some people. Like, I have friends who don't drink alcohol, and I drink alcohol. I don't have an issue with it. But when I'm with them, I don't drink alcohol, and I won't give them alcohol, obviously. Like, I would not become that kind of a cause for them to have issues or to even violate their conscience. And when I say they have issues, I don't mean like they can't hold their alcohol. Like, they think they're sinning if they drink alcohol. So I don't drink alcohol with them. Yeah, I don't drink alcohol with them. I wouldn't offer them alcohol. I respect their conscience. It's a conscience issue. And if they don't want to eat pork, cool, don't eat pork. I won't eat pork with you. I'm good, man. Right? Like, life and especially faith in God is a lot more than what we eat or drink.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like, for people who are confused, who are viewers, and who doesn't know why pork is banned, it comes down to hygiene, your food hygiene, and basically that's it. It's not. There's like the devil is not in the pork. It's not something major like that. It is just
correct. Again, I would say that's maybe of a more modern interpretation of why they're not allowed to eat pork. But I think it's like, why aren't they not allowed to wear clothing made of two material?
Don't you think at the time pork was the law was made there about the pork? Wasn't it about cleanliness?
I don't think so. I tend to, unless I'm convinced by the text that it's about cleanliness.
I think it would be because.
It might be. I don't put that outside of the realm of possibility.
Okay, let me give you my perspective from real life experience. When I was in my country, I had the chance going like farms and visit chickens, cows,
yes.
and
so have I.
All of that, movement. So the porks, they're like when you go there in the farm, they're relatively away from the domesticated animals. They don't even seem like a domestic animal. Sometimes they're away from there.
Correct.
And they eat filth. I don't want to discuss anyone who is listening to this, but they eat filth. They eat their own shit.
Yeah.
They eat I
They'll eat
saw it.
anything. They'll eat anything you give them to eat.
Yeah, they one of the pigs just died there, and then they
They eat
eat
the
like the
pig. Yeah.
body. Yeah,
Mhm.
so the carcass, and they're like real filthy, and it kind of makes sense. Like I don't know why there is this resentment against eating pork. It's not something
Yeah. I mean, the same could be said about chickens, by the way.
really.
Yeah, the
There could
chickens are
be
filthy.
like the volume. You have to consider the volume as well. Like when the pigs eat, they eat. I'm telling you,
Correct.
they will. When they eat, you'll be full for a week.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's my thing: is when I look at the laws in the Old Testament, predominantly the laws and the reasoning for the laws is because God is setting apart His people to be separate from the rest of the nations around them. This is the reason why He doesn't allow them to shave the edges of their beard, or this is the reason why He doesn't allow the priests to wear clothing made of two materials. Like we can't argue like, oh, wearing clothing of two materials would have been a cleanliness sort of thing. It's kind of like weird, right? It's like, what's the point? Because God is setting aside people, and I don't know, but it could be argued that the people around them maybe had pork in their diet, and God is setting them apart even in their dietary practices to be different from the people around them. And when we consider those things, especially when all the other laws are considered into this, we see that God is setting His people aside. That's just
Oh,
the
I
reality of it.
forgot also one more thing on that point. So not eating pork is like considered kosher. So, and I think the word kosher in Hebrew is clean or cleanliness, something
Mhm.
like that. If I'm
Yeah,
not
it's like
sure,
the
if
halal
someone correct.
equivalent.
Yeah, it's about eating clean. So, though the reason is in the name,
Yeah, but it's
basically.
weird because what makes something kosher, even nowadays, even in the Jewish community, is that a rabbi has to come and bless it.
Ah, I don't know about that.
Now I'm telling you, like I went to a restaurant recently. This is hilarious. Okay, so I went out. It was sort of a fancy schmancy restaurant with my wife for our anniversary, and I'm looking at the menu, and there's this steak that I can get, and it's the same exact steak, except the prices are different and the sizes are different, and the smaller steak is more expensive than the larger steak. And I'm looking at this and I'm, reading the fine print and it says, oh, it's kosher. And I said, I'll bet you anything. That's the only reason why it's more expensive. It's because a priest has come and made this kosher. They've done this ceremony over this meat.
Is that
And
it?
that was
I didn't
exactly
know
it.
about
I mean,
that.
I asked, so I called the waiter over and I was like, what's the difference? Is there a different way you guys actually prepare these two? And the guy was like, no, there's no way. They're all prepared the same exact way. And I said, why is it more expensive? And he was like, because it's kosher. It's been blessed by a priest. And I was like, okay.
What?
And he said they live in the restaurant was in a location where there's a larger population of Jewish people. And he said that wasn't on the menu before. And basically we had a lot of customers that would keep asking us whether we had kosher steak. And we added it to menu. And I said, okay. Like, so now I should say this, that there are more things than that. There have to be certain ways of slaughtering the animal. There are some rules with that. Like Muslims have very similar stuff, but meaning like all their blood is drained and all that stuff. But modern slaughter methods essentially take care of all that stuff. But it essentially it's been blessed like any.
So I have no idea because I'm just gonna ask from a point of not knowing.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So
I mean, at least that's in the United States. I just tell you what I've
so
literally like. I was at a restaurant
the
recently.
priest. This opens a whole lot of questions. I'm not gonna lie. So if they follow the ritual of slaughtering
Yes,
proper, and then this is all hypothetical, and if the priest doesn't bless it, would it be considered kosher?
that's a really good question.
Yeah.
So immediately my response would be no, it wouldn't. But it could be the case that within Jewish law there might be something about the head of the family or the eldest man in the family being the priest of the family and having the ability to bless it. Because I know there's certain meals that are done where the head of the family guides the family as the priest of the family in that meal, which I think is brilliant, by the way. I do think that the head of Christian families ought to be the priests of their families. We ought to be spiritually leading our families. But the response might be that. Now I'm taking a long shot kind of guess there. Maybe they might say if there's no priest that is able to come, or there's no priest in the area, then you are the priest. And I think there's precedent there within even the Old Testament.
It's kind of like you're saying, it's like the head of the family is kind of
The
he
priest.
kind of gives his blessing. It's not like he's the one. It's not like it has to go through him. It's just
Correct. Yeah. I'm just talking about when it comes to like marketed sort of stuff, right? Like if I go to buy a product, so if I go to buy some bread, there's plenty of bread that's sold here that's Middle Eastern bread, like pita bread and stuff. And on the back, you'll see a little K on there that it's kosher. And it's like, well, what makes this kosher? It's like, well, it's been like verified, it's been blessed by a priest and stuff. Now, again, that assumes it doesn't have all the ingredients, right? Like the bread wasn't made and dipped in like pork fat. Like obviously those things are assumed in there.
wow. Hey, I don't know about that. I thought it was just like apart from the restrictions, just as long as you don't go outside the restrictions, you're good. I didn't know there was
yeah, and by the way, and I think those are you're probably more correct in the biblical sense, but those are the things that have become religiously added to the community as to the way they do things. And maybe these are things that were added out of necessity, say during the Babylonian exile or something like that. Because a lot of practices within Judaism became developed out of Babylonian captivity. Say like the synagogue system. The synagogue system is not in the Old Testament. There's nowhere in the Old Testament you will find a synagogue.
Correct.
So where do the synagogue? All of a sudden you read the New Testament and there's all these synagogues everywhere. You go, where did that come from? Well, it came out of them being in Babylon. And in Babylon, because they stayed there, they made roots there, and they were away from the temple, so they created these local congregational meetings called synagogue temples or synagogues. And if they didn't have synagogues, they met by rivers. Now, if you've heard the song "By the Rivers of Babylon," there's a reason for that song, and it's by the rivers of Babylon we sat down and we sang songs. Essentially the song is saying that they sat there under impression and singing songs about God. So
interesting.
It's just religious development. And we see this within the Christian church as well. You see religious development. Like people do things where you kind of go, that's not in the New Testament. Why are we doing that? So you and I are very used to probably walking to church and lighting a candle.
Yeah.
All right? Like that is a part of the tradition we grew up in. But like if I were to say, well, show me in the Bible where Christians are lighting candles and praying.
It's not like you don't expect things like that. No.
It's not there.
That'll be outrageous.
But it's a development. Like we get it's a development. And sometimes it could be bad and sometimes it could be good. Like, so if somebody thinks they can't pray if they don't light a candle, then I would say, well, come on, man. But
I think your view that like the head of the household kind of makes sense. It actually makes sense, honestly.
Yeah, just knowing Jewish culture and not. But this would be a good question I would ask my friend that's going to come on in a couple of weeks. Sorry, Jerome is. I just saw his comment. He said Ethiopian pork dishes actually sound revolutionary, but the market for it just won't exist.
Oh my god!
Yeah, guys, let's not shake it up, okay? Let's not.
It is actually like an abomination when you.
Yeah,
talk
that's
about
interesting. I didn't know this. This was, by the way, I learned something today, guys. I had no idea that the Ethiopian church teaches that you shouldn't eat pork. Because again, I grew up in the Armenian church, which is again Oriental Orthodox, very close theologically to the Ethiopian church, and pork is very, very common in Armenian dishes.
I'm surprised, like you as well. I thought all the Orientals are the same. Like,
I wonder if that would be a good point of research. I wonder whether like the Syriacs and stuff like that have no pork as well, and it's the Armenians that are the weirdos, right? That's a possibility. But as far as I know, the Greeks
which one, which like apart like on the Oriental, which one is more closer to the Armenian one, or which one is derivative? Because ours is from the Egypt, like from
Egyptian Coptic. Yeah.
Alexandria. Yeah.
So yeah,
Coptic.
the Armenian one is on its own because Armenians have been there from the beginning. Like
Really?
Armenians have bishops at Nicaea.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
It's,
it's been a great conversation with you, Nati. I do have to end the stream because I
Mhm.
got a meeting I got to rush to.
yeah, no
Thank you for
worries.
calling
Thanks,
in, man.
Thanks for giving me a chance to
Anytime.
speak here. I appreciate it.
Anytime. If this is the way that our conversations are going to go, you're more than welcome anytime, man.
Of course, yeah, this
Thank
is
you.
the way it has to be.
Yes. And I hope that one day you and I can sit around the table and eat something. I would just say Ethiopian.
It won't be pork. I still
It won't
don't.
be
I still
pork.
don't eat it. You know.
That's fine. It could be full vegetarian for all I care.
You should. You should.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Hey, that's the way the conversations are supposed to be, folks. Hey, thank you guys. We've been on for an hour and 57 minutes. I do have to go to a meeting. My buddy Tom jumped into the chat. He said, hello, chat. And then he said, Arthur, T-30. So it means I got to get to a meeting. Appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much. Sorry that we didn't have the interview with John McCrae from What Do You Meme, but we will have the interview with John tomorrow, 2 p.m. That's why we reversed it. Very excited about this. Come with your questions. We're going to be talking about YouTube. We're going to be talking about apologetics and social media, stuff that John's really, really good at. And I think we're going to have a blast. Take care. God bless you. And I will see you guys tomorrow.